Hello and welcome to Head Coach, your trusted resource when it comes to health and wellness. My name is Danny McFarland and I'm your host, and would love to welcome today our amazing guest, Inali Cessna. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Danny. It's awesome to be here with you and your audience. I'm super excited.
Tell us about the Enneagram and why we should know about it.
Yeah, so the Enneagram is exciting. It's a map of creation, really, a map of creation. This is not what you usually hear out there, especially nowadays in the modern Enneagram. If you Google, you will learn a lot about types. You'll learn a lot about personality. But the ancient roots of the Enneagram tells you that the Enneagram is the signs of the presence of God. So the Enneagram shows you the facets of creation. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like if God had ingredients to make creation happen, these were the ingredients. These 9 ingredients is everywhere, including, of course, in ourselves and in our personality. So the Enneagram of personality is a small facet of it all. And it's a very fascinating facet because we can experience it in our lives, within us, in our feelings, in our thoughts, and in our actions. So it comes really close to us. But the Enneagram is much more than that. It's a map of creation.
I know that I went and took it. I found it incredibly amazing and insightful to different aspects of my personality, and really, for the first time ever doing it and then hearing about myself, I felt seen and heard, which was really interesting. So often I'm looking for somebody else to acknowledge that in me, and for me, I felt like I really started to understand myself a lot better. And I know it mentioned 9 different personality types that are inside of me.
I don't usually talk about types, although a lot of literature in the Enneagram will refer to types, personality types, but I like to see those as points. So the Enneagram, the symbol of the Enneagram is a circle with a triangle and a hexad inside, and the intersection of these designs form 9 points in the circumference. And each of these points then represents a personality type, but it's also much more than that. Each of these points represent, let's say, an ingredient of creation or an energy of creation. I'll give you a good idea on how the Enneagram can transform the way you see the world, right? So, for example, point one. Point 1 is about perfection. It's about excellence. It's about goodness. It's about improvement. It's about order and structure. All right. So this morning I wake up and I take my car off the garage, and there is this big truck right on the driveway drilling a drill in the asphalt. It's noisy, and I have to turn all around. There's a lot of people right early in the morning. And I'm thinking, of course, the first thing that comes is that criticism. Oh my God, I'm going to have to listen to this all day. Why are they doing that? But at the same time, I look at it from the perspective of the point 1 of the Enneagram. Well, they are improving the neighborhood. They're fixing up the sewage system in the condo. So they are here to get things better, to get things in a more excellent order. And therefore, I see right there in front of me the manifestation of this point 1 of the Enneagram in my life. And now I have a choice. Am I going to approach it from the place of light and essence and energy, which is the improvement and the attempt to make it excellent, the attempt to make it better? Or am I going to approach it from a place of lower development or anti-power, and I'm just going to criticize and be annoyed about the situation?
Huh. That's a really interesting perspective, or shift in perspective, empowering shift. Let me ask you this. You mentioned point 1 and it fixing things up, improving things. Can you Can you explain? You said there's 9 points. Do each 9 points have a meaning or a title to each of them?
Yes, they do. Each 9 points has a different flavor to it. And of course, when you look at it from the personality standpoint, we can somewhat sense all of these inside of us. But again, they are much more than personality. So let's go through that. I like to start with point 8 because point 8 is it's a disruptive energy. It's an energy that it's there to disrupt the status quo. Think about Big Bang. There was nothing. It was all darkness. And all of a sudden, the Big Bang comes. And so it's an energy that's on your face. It's immediate. It's changing the status quo. It's very challenging, of course, because it promotes change. And it's large and in charge. It has a great intensity. We call it the challenger.
I really love how you refer to it as energies. That's really a neat way of how all these different energies exist inside of us in the world and how each of them serve a purpose, have a value or a challenge, depending on how it shows up.
I think that's a very important perspective, and it's not very much talked about out there in the world. But it's when we start understanding the Enneagram as energies of creation, we start observing that not only in ourselves and others, but in everything, in the situations, in nature, in social political events that it's happening. And a lot of that energy of the 8 is now happening with some social turmoil of trying to find new truths, trying to disrupt the status quo about sexuality, about politics in so many areas. And so when we can look at the world from the perspective of this energy, what kind of big bang it's causing in society today, what it's asking of us as a society, what's being created out of this. So you start taking the world with much more depth and also much more calm. It's like, I don't have to necessarily react to this energy. I can observe and understand and kind of flow with it. What is it asking of me? And so I find that perspective to be very important nowadays. I want to mention something. The Enneagram was brought into the West by a Armenian Russian professor called George Gurdjieff. And George Gurdjieff supposedly learned about the Enneagram from a Sufi sheikh. And one thing that he said was that this was supposed to be confidential, it was supposed to be a secret because people could misuse this information. And the way he saw it being misused is that people could use this information to emphasize differences rather than use this information to understand union. You understand that we are all together. We are all in this as one. And so he preached a lot of responsibility when learning this information on how we're going to use it and what's the highest good in using this. We're now in a time in the world where this information is, I see it almost as salvation for humanity.
I love what you just said so much. And the reason being, it's so interesting. It could be used, if used incorrectly, it can be used to divide us.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it's meant to bring us into union. And it's interesting because in some ways, with what I experience seeing in society and things going on, we're being influenced to divide and separate ourselves. And so more than ever, I see the importance of really getting this to the people, to everyone, so that we re-empower ourselves by using this as a tool of bringing us back together, stimulating empathy and compassion for one another, recognizing the oneness that exists in all of us.
Absolutely, Danny. And the energy of the eight has, every energy has their lower aspects, their lower level of development and their higher level of development. But the lower level of development of the eight is one that can cause great destruction. And we see this in wars, in all kinds of social unrest. But the opportunity here is when we look at what's happening from a place of, okay, what is this energy what kind of new order is this energy trying to entice? If this is a big bang, what is about to be created? What is asking to be created out of this? And so we can take out of that lower level of development of destruction into the higher level of development of the eight, which is a higher truth. What is a higher truth? A greater truth for society nowadays in the 21st century and so forth.
When I'm hearing you share this was popping up in my head it's like there's the action that the energy causes. So that, to me, I relate that it is like what is. But then there's our reaction, which I relate to as our perspective, like how we choose to relate to what is, and then how we choose to interpret that and perceive it and move forward into it will then determine our direction or outcome.
Yes, exactly, Danny, because, we are part of the reality we observe. We and reality, we and creation, we're not separate. We are one with it. And so whether we are reacting or whether we are living, we are causing an impact in that which we are part of. And so it's an inner and outer experience that happens at the same time together.
I'm hearing it and seeing it in such a different way right now, just by what you shared and relating to it as energies. I've heard so much about the Enneagram and explored it in many of the other aspects. So I feel like this is a really fresh way of interpreting the energies, not just in ourselves, but in the world. And what I was hearing from you when you said that is really about the cooperation between us, is our choice to either resist or cooperate with what is. And then we get the opportunity to utilize it for our own growth or our own deterioration.
Exactly, Danny. I love what you're saying about cooperation, because there are ways where the misunderstanding of these energies can create a sabotage mechanism. For example, the energy of the eight. The energy of the eight, as you can see in a lot of the social unrests and even war, people are coming from a place where they feel betrayed or they feel hurt or they feel rejected. And from that pain, they react with dominance or intimidation. Let's kill the other side. And of course, that reaction of dominance and intimidation creates more hurt and more rejection and more betrayal. And so it carves a circle downwards where we start perpetuating that which we want to avoid. It's a sabotage mechanism that takes us down in a rut. And so the importance of understanding these energies, first of all, is recognizing, okay, maybe people are coming from being rejected, hurt, and betrayed. But now if I use domination upon that, I'm just reinforcing that. So I have to choose a different way forward. And a different way forward, maybe the higher levels of development of this energy they're looking for a higher truth. They're looking for a higher order of things. And so what is this higher order? How can we mediate together, something that can take them into this higher truth without using the domination and the intimidation that can be so impulsive in that arena? And my job as a mediator, I use these energies a lot because it's like the parties, in a conflict will come, right there in their lower levels of development. And so to carve that space to recognize what is the higher order that we are trying to create here together, and help them step out of the blame, blaming one another or victimizing one another or taking away the responsibility, to really come to the crux of the matter. What is the real truth here that we want to embrace for the future?
When you were describing that about the world and uh, the need to dominate, I was thinking about my own life and how when I was younger, my responses to things, how I interpreted it. This is so multifaceted in a way because it's like first how I interpreted it as being separate or being attacked, and then what response that would evoke out of me based on that version of me interpreting that at that moment. And then I would respond in an aggressive way of like needing to defend, protect myself. So bringing that into the mediation world that you work with, I imagine that's an element that so many people are challenged by and struggle by. And how has the incorporation of understanding the Enneagram and the energy shifted how you work with mediation?
Yeah, so you were just touching on it as you were speaking before, because when people are in a conflict, when we are in a conflict, we come with our lower levels of development. We are restricted. We are contracted. We can't see things clearly. And so, for example, in the energy of the 8, it's very common that people attack. They attack each other. They attack themselves. They attack the mediator in their tone of voice, in their demeanors, in their words, and their actions. And so that sense of attack is very present in the conversation. And as a mediator, then there's a human part of me that says, I want to attack back. Who are they to talk to me this way? And I want to respond in that same level. But then as a mediator, I recognize, okay, if I do that, I am piling up on the feeling of rejection and hurt and betrayal that they already have. And so it's actually, the attack is not about me. It has nothing to do with me. The attack is where they reside inside at this moment. Okay, I see that you feel I see that you feel betrayed. I see that you feel hurt. I see that you feel rejected. And then they start calming down because they recognize, okay, my feelings are being understood here. And the minute that the feelings are being understood, they start moving to the neofrontal cortex, and we can start having a more rational conversation. Okay, so what is the new order you would like to create? What are the values and the situation that you would like to create moving forward? And so then they can start kind of stepping out of the past, out of the sense of betrayal and hurt, to look into a future that they want to create. And so the conversation shifts. But it's a dynamic where I have to step outside of that impulse to bring that same energy back. And now understanding the Enneagram really helps, of course, because I can see that. So all the 9 energies are present in all creation and is present in all of us. And so when I see someone approaching me in that attack of the 8, I know that energy inside of me. I know what it is to feel hurt, to feel betrayed, to feel taken advantage of, to feel rejected. And so I can step into that place of deeply knowing that energy within me to respond to this person from a whole different perspective.
A couple of things I heard that were interesting is one, on one level, you're experiencing it on a personal level and taking it personally and reacting to the situation in your own aggression or survival. And another version I heard is you took a moment to go out of yourself and be an observer and what's going on within them and then recognize. And then what I heard you say is then I respond, which is quite differently than reacting to the situation in a way that a person feels heard and seen and helping to diffuse the situation. And then you mentioned the energy type 9, which is after 8. Is that what you shift into next?
Yeah, as we move to the 9, I just want to mention those energies are very dynamic. And I think this is one of the great aspects of the Enneagram is that the Enneagram is not trying to put us in a box of you are this point or you are this energy or you are this type. The Enneagram is showing how these energies are commingling and moving all the time in us, around us, everywhere. And so understanding the movement of the energy, and then you go into the inner dynamics, the inner lines that explains where the movement goes and so forth. It's a very interesting exercise, but it's too deep for us to go into that here. But usually when we are explaining the Enneagram, yes, we start with the 8 and then we go into the 9. Just also 8, 9, and 1 are all like considered the body types. They work with gut feeling. They're working with their body a lot more than other types.
I'm visualizing like a clock, working
Right.
around to the different personalities. Can you, for the audience, people listening, is there a brief title or quick explanation that maybe you can go through the 9 different energies?
So the 8 is the challenger, as we just talked about. The 9 is called the peaceful mediator. It's the peaceful type. There is an avoidance of conflict in the 9 and almost a numbing of the self in order to maintain a sense of peace. It's called the peaceful mediator. The 1 is called the perfectionist. There is an intention towards order, towards perfection, towards excellence, towards improvement. The 2 is called the helper or the giver, and that's a tendency to offer themselves to others. It's about giving and feeling loved and lovable. And so the 2 energy, it's like we recognize ourselves when we are in relationship to another. I have a dog right now that has a lot of 2 energy. I went to the beach with my dog this morning and he wants to say hi to every person and to every other dog. It's like he just needs that connection. And if the person doesn't pay attention to him, then he becomes more clingy and he wants to jump on the person. And it's like, no, they don't want your attention. And so that's kind of like an example of that energy, that it's very approachable and reach out to others in order to satisfy their needs, especially in terms of love and connection. The 3 is the achiever. Is the one that it stands in the radiance and the glory of God in a way. So it's always looking to stand in that glory over and over again. How can I stand out? How can I be whatever is perceived as success? The 4 is the individualist. The 4 is romance inside ourselves. So I like to tell people, some people judge the 4 energy because it's an energy that it's dramatic or is poetic or is artistic. But then I ask, how is romance in your life? Because the 4 is that ability to take things deeper, to feel it so deep that we can see the origin of it. We can see the meaning of it, the significance of it. And it creates romance. It romanticize life, romanticize relationship. The 4 looks at a flower and it's that flower speaks to the floor in so many levels, and the smell and the looks and the beauty and the life that it's in there and the flourishing of it. And so the 4 is taking so many messages and meanings from that flower when others may look at it and not really, give it its due importance. And so the 4 is that romance, the individualist, that it goes so deep into the meaning and significance of all there is. The 5 is the observer or the investigator. The 5 loves data, loves research, loves analysis. It wants to understand and to comprehend intellectually very much so the world around themselves. My son has a lot of 5 in him. And part of the 5 is the need to have their own space. They like to isolate themselves because in that isolation, we are getting the data, getting the information, processing all that information. But that also can be the danger for the 5 because the more I alienate myself to get the data, the less applicable that data becomes because I'm not actually applying it in the world in a way that it's useful. So I insisted with my son is like, make it useful. Usefulness is a great path for the 5. The 6, we call it the loyalist. The 6 is a very loyal energy, but in order to get in that loyal place, it's going to doubt a lot. It's going to look for everything that can go wrong. It's going to look for all the dangers. But once it finds that which overcame all its doubts, then it's like, I got it. That's what I'm loyal to. And it's very much related to faith. Because, of course, the more we live in this world, the more we realize there's nothing in this physical world that can ever be 100%, no danger. And so eventually we come to that place that faith, a higher power is the only place I can fully trust. And that's the 6. And the 7, of course, is the optimist. The 7 is the optimist, is a very generative energy, trying to ignite the new possibilities, multitasking, always looking at next. And there is kind of like it's an energy that feels like this very moment is not sufficient to fulfill me. So I'm always in the moment ahead. And of course, that can create great instability if not well managed, and it can create a sense of insatiability, even if not well managed. But when it's well managed, then we create ways of taking the necessary next steps in order to create the new innovation and generative possibilities that we see in this vision of the 7, because 7s are visionaries, beautiful visionaries.
We're going to have more videos where we go into each personality point on its own. So you guys will all have an opportunity to hear in-depth explanation and understanding of each point. If any one of these resonated with you already, or a few of them, you can jump ahead into the videos. We'll have a playlist where you can hear in-depth explanation of each one of those points. In regards to using these 9 points, how does that help an individual understand themselves more and relate and communicate with other people better?
Well, that answer, I would say, is infinite. Once you learn about the Enneagram, you will never look at yourself the same way again. You're never going to look at someone else the same way again. And you're never going to look at the world the same way again. It changed your perspective of life. And that's why I think it has to be taken with great respect and great responsibility. Because one way you can look at this and say, well, I'm a 9 and you're a 7 and they are a 3 and they are a 4 and we are all different. And we can't do anything about that. Sometimes we come into judging energies that we find are better or worse or good or bad. And that's really not the point. The idea is to start recognizing, where are these energies in me? And when I see myself acting out of habitual patterns, because what happens with a predominant energy inside of us is that energy becomes our habit. We think we are making choices. We think it's like, it's my choice, but it's actually just a sort of a matrix. It's a choice that we are making because this energy guides us into that direction. So I'll give you a very personal example. I lead with the 9. The 9 is the predominant energy in me. And it often, if you take Enneagram tests, your energy may vary. There's 2 or 3 points that are usually your predominant ones. But mostly you're going to stay with those same points throughout life. So 9, I lead with the 9. And part of the 9 is to not rock the boat, not cause conflict. I don't like to rock the boat. And in order not to rock the boat, what I do as a defense mechanism is I bring myself into, I call it a clam. I bring myself into a shell. So when things are too conflictuous outside, I come into this shell, and inside this shell, nobody can reach me. And inside this shell, I sort of create a bubble where I bring into myself an energy that may resemble peace for me. But at the same time, it's alienating me from the world, right? And so in my life, I left my country of origin. Of course, I saw I'm from Brazil originally. So I grew up during the military dictatorship. My dad was the chief of the police department. I think my parents were divorced. And so I saw enough conflict in my life and enough violence. I lived in São Paulo, Brazil, one of the most dangerous cities in the world, that put me into this clam to the point that I left the country. I didn't know if to me it seemed the most sensible thing to do. Why am I going to stay in this country that it's causing distress in me? I'm going to look for a better place to live. And that was part of me coming to the U.S. And of course, then I come to the U.S., but I see other conflicts, and other turmoils. And it's like, okay, that's where it takes me to recognize the Enneagram. All right, conflict is everywhere. Why am I running away from it? Why am I trying to put myself in this clam? And what can I do to myself to step into conflict with a different perspective? And so what I learned with the Enneagram is my opportunity to step into conflict from a place of mediation, from a place of understanding, from a place of bringing peace. It's like my presence is peace. My energy is peace. And therefore, I don't have to run away in the clam, although sometimes I still do that. But now I know when I'm doing that, and then I can take myself out. Okay, I have to peek out into the world and go back and trust this essence, this energy, that it's part of me, but it's much greater than me. It's kind of like this divine energy that is a gift of my creation. And I can trust in this energy more so than trust in the little clam where I keep running away from conflict and keep being afraid of being in the world. And so it has taken me to a whole new career, if you will. I started as a lawyer, and part of my motivation to be a lawyer was to defend myself, because I saw the world as a dangerous world where I needed to defend myself. And so I went into law, and of course I saw conflict there all the time, and I became more and more into my clam. I went into a corporate environment. I went into intellectual property, so it was not so emotionally based and so forth. But from there, things the world is just perfect in bringing exactly what you need in a way that you can come to recognize that essence that is yours, because we all have ours. And you can stand in that essence with more awareness, with more presence, with more gratitude, without having to rely so much in our defense mechanisms.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure there's a lot of people already identifying with 9 based on what you were sharing right there. Can you go around the other points, Enneagram points, and describe some of the most common challenges each one of them might have?
Yes, of course. Let's do that. So for the 9, as I mentioned, is this idea of feeling that I'm in conflict. And so I disconnect in order to create peace. But of course, the moment I disconnect, I feel more separated. And then I create this whole conflict inside of me because I'm separated from the world. So I create what I'm trying to avoid. There is a great author called Sandra Maitre. She wrote a book called The Spiritual Dimensions of the Enneagram, where she talks about this stubborn neglectfulness of the 9, where I hide and nobody can take me away from there. But the more I hide, the more I lose the sense of oneness that I'm trying to find, which is the true sense of peace. Now, let's go into the 1. The 1, like I mentioned, is this energy of perfection and excellence and goodness. And what happens with this energy is that it's constantly trying to improve and to correct. And so the minute it feels that it's flawed or it's wrong, it goes into criticism and judgment of themselves and others. And the more it goes into criticism and judgment, the more we feel corrupted and flawed and wrong. And so we get into this sabotage mechanism that is called critical perfectionism. Just become highly critical of ourselves and others. We start pointing out to the wrong that we want to avoid. And the more we look at the wrong, the more wrong we see. The 2 is another energy, like I mentioned before. It's a very loving energy, it's a nurturing energy. I like the energy of the 2. As a mother, I like the energy of the 2 because I see that energy in breastfeeding, for example, where you're giving a piece of yourself to sustain someone else. I mean, motherhood in a way is so much of the 2. It's like, it's an experience of giving your life to someone else. It doesn't matter if I die, as long as this person is going to live. And I like to call the defense mechanism of the 2 is the lizard. You know, the lizard can have its tail cut off and it will grow another tail, but it will let the predator take its tail away and will survive and grow another tail. So in the 2, we are always giving and providing as a source of sustenance to others. Now, the trap here is this idea of need to be needed. Now I need to be needed because if the others don't need me, then who am I? And so what happens here is in order to be wanted and appreciated, I start engulfing others. It's like I start giving them all that they need with an expectation that they will love me back, that they will love me in return. And then if they don't love me back in the way I think they should love me back, then I go into this wrath, it's called, you know, the lower aspects of development of the 2 is a wrath. And so in my fear of being unloved, I engulf others with kind of like a hidden agenda. And when that doesn't work, you know, I engulf them even more and expecting some kind of returns, and it becomes a downward spiral until I realize that it's not my will, it's thy will. You know, it's thy will. There's a greater power. I can take care of myself first so that then I can take care of others. And it becomes a more balanced flow of giving and receiving. And we really come to recognize in the 2, the beauty of this balance of giving and receiving. Everything has to have a balance of giving and receiving in order to be sustainable. The 3 is, like I mentioned, the glory of existence. I like to look at the 3 as the sun shining every morning. no matter what happens, that sun is going to be there next morning. And even if there's clouds covering it, we know that there is a sun shining underneath the clouds. That radiance is always there. And I love that as a symbolism of the energy of the three, because when we stand in the energy of the three, we are like the peacock. We dress up in this radiance, dress up in this success. And what happens is, if I'm underneath that dress up of success, if I feel that I'm a failure or that I have no value, I start relying on this external success, on dressing up in an image of success in order to feel like I'm not a failure. But then that turns into deceit. I start pretending, that I'm some kind of big deal and some kind of success. And the more I deceive, the more I feel like a failure and I feel like I have no value. And the more I have to dress up like success, and the more I do so, the more I feel like that I'm a failure. And so I create a downward spiral. Now, this is called chasing after success. And we see this a lot nowadays in social media. People are always, posting pictures that are photoshopped and they look so perfect and everything looks so amazing in social media. And we are dressing up in this facade of success. But deep down inside, the more we dress up in this fake success, the more we feel deep down inside that we are not good enough, that we have no value, and that we are worthless. And so it creates a downward spiral. The way to get out of it is really come into that authenticity. What's really true for me? Is it my appearance? Is it my outer image that it's who I am? Or is something much deeper inside of me? The essence and the soul inside of me that can really hold me strong in this world. The 4 I like to see as the opossum. The opossum, when the opossum is threatened, it pretends it's dead. It just lies there and pretends I'm already dead, so don't bother me. And that's the 4. The 4 in us is the one that it's so deep into our own emotions and into our feelings. And sometimes there's an emotionalism of lack and a place of comparison inside of us that just makes us paralyzed. And we withdraw from the world in order to deal with those emotions inside. So the 4 is kind of like this self-indulgence of just soaking in our feelings and in our emotions in order to make sense of it, in order to find the deeper meaning and the deeper purpose of it. Now, the 5 is, I like to call the 5 the roly-poly. When I was a kid, I had a roly-poly collection. I used to sit in the garden and collect roly-polies. And the minute you touch them, when they feel attacked, they go into a ball. But inside the ball, all the little legs are, the little legs keep moving inside. And that's the 5. It's called the non-intrusion. The 5, when the 5 feels threatened, it goes into itself in order to kind of gather the information, the data, the research that will help them assess the situation. And so they go into themselves, but the mind is trying to compute everything and understand and make sense of things.
I'm laughing because I'm a 5 and I totally get that, but the little legs are like, but then you just resort inside and then everything's running wild in there.
Exactly.
As a way of determining a safe survival, best route. Yeah. I love that.
And the more the 5 goes into itself, it creates sort of like a useless mentalization. We start, one thing takes into another, and then that thought takes another, and it takes into another research, and you go into that useless mentalization of the 5.
And it's almost like, now I love this analogy because then it reminds me of, and then it's like, well, trying to figure everything out before I determine it's safe enough to step into action, to open up so I can actually use those legs to move somewhere. But instead, I can sit there and it seems like I've covered a
Exactly.
million miles, but I'm in the same spot.
Yeah, we call it for the five this perpetual mode of preparation.
Oh, yeah,
Five is
yeah.
a perpetual preparation mode because of what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the secret is really to go out into the world and do it anyway, because by being into the world, you're going to collect the actual living data of that which you're trying to figure out. So the next one is the six, the loyalist, which I see a lot as the electric eel. The electric eel, it's always kind of like tensed, and it's kind of like this looking for what are the dangers, what can go wrong, and doubting the system and everything around creates that kind of anxiety, that electricity that that we call attachment to doubt. So the six is always doubting and always questioning because it's looking for that which it can really trust. What is worth of my full trust? And so when we are in the perpetual doubt, we start stepping into the six, which can generate a lot of fear and a lot of paranoia. And I think a lot in the world today is of the energy of the six, because we see, especially after COVID, at least in my coaching, there is an increase in anxiety, if you will, the sense of anxiety and paranoia, because there's so much information and so much happening at the same time, and we don't know how to process it, and we start doubting: is this really fake news? Is this true news? And it creates this constant doubt and paranoia, which is asking for faith. What is your direct experience of faith? How can you cultivate a direct experience of faith that shields you from the paranoia that is out there in the world? And then the seven, I like to see the seven as the zebra. The zebras are known for traveling in a group, because when they are all together, they all have the same stripes of black and white. So they look bigger. And so they protect themselves against predators because they look bigger. They're all together. And the seven is kind of like that, is the person that it's at the same time, this person is in so many areas doing so many things that they're spreading themselves like the zebras in this big territory, because they're, igniting the possibilities and looking what's best and what can be more fun over there, over there, over there. And of course here, the idea is that I don't want to feel stuck or sad or bored. And so I keep relying on something else. I keep relying on another entertainment, another activity, another something out there. And the more I rely on something out there, all of a sudden I'm stuck again. I'm bored again. And then I need to look for more of that. And so it creates a pattern of insatiability, kind of like a starving heart, that it's never truly fulfilled. And it's called the frenetic escapism, And the path here is really coming to mindfulness, coming to this breath, this moment, how this breath is enough to fulfill me right now, right here. And then we go from moment to moment, from breath to breath, in order to create a fulfilling life in the energy of the seven.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I'm like so excited now for us to dive into like each personality separately. But before we do that, I'd love for you to quickly explain a little bit about some of the other elements of the Enneagram. One of them being the wing and what that means, and the other, maybe a quick explanation of how when we are in growth or digression, we may show up like a different personality.
This question is awesome, Danny, because it really highlights the idea of movement. The whole point of the Enneagram and what makes the Enneagram unique is movement. Gurdjieff used to say, we are never the same, not even for half an hour. We are always moving. We're always changing. And we can become more conscious about that movement and more conscious about that change. So whatever energy predominates in us, that energy is always moving. So first it can move around the wings, which are the two adjacent energies. So if I lead with a 9, my wings would be the 1 and the 8. And it can also move in the inner lines. And the inner lines go in one direction when we are expanding, evolving, and integrating ourselves. And then it goes into the other direction when we are trapped, if you will, or when we are disintegrating, as they say, or when we are in stress. Now, here's a really good secret in the Enneagram. Every time we walk in the direction of stress and disintegration and trap, there is a missing piece for us right there. And so here is a really good thing you can learn from the Enneagram. What is my missing piece? And what am I looking for when I'm in stress? Because usually when we get in stress, we're just, feeling sorry for ourselves and we don't know what we are there. Now, the Enneagram will tell you exactly why you're there and exactly what's the missing piece that will help you turn around into your integration. And so I'll give you an example. The 9, the path of integration for the 9 is 9, 3, and then 6. It goes in that direction. 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6. So when I'm integrated, I lead with the 9. When I'm integrated, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to come here and do a podcast and stick my neck out and let people hear and see me because I step into that 3, the radiance and the glory in me. When I'm disintegrated, when I'm in stress, the 9 goes into the different direction. It's 9, 6, 3, 9, 6, 3. So I go into the 6. I start doubting everything. I start feeling that anxiety, the fear, and I start projecting that fear outside. So what I see outside, I see it a lot more fearful than it actually is because I'm stepping into that 6, the lower levels of the 6 in me. But now I know that when I go into this integration, it's offering me a missing piece. And my missing piece is sort of the superpower of the 6 is what is faith for me? What's my direct experience of faith? How have I forgotten my direct experience of faith? And how can I do something to create that direct experience of faith? And so when I'm in distress, that's my missing piece. That's what I need. And the minute I get that, okay, I step back into, let's step out into the world. Let's stick my neck out. Let's get out of the clam. Okay. So that's how it works. Now for the other numbers, it goes, the direction of integration is from 1 to 7 to 5 to 8 to 2 to 4 back to the 1. So I'll give you an example. A 1 that is integrated, okay? A 1 that is integrated. Remember, the 1 is trying to be perfectionist, trying to put order in things and to create excellence. All right, that 1 that is integrated, it's going to start moving towards the 7. What else can I improve? What else can be better? What kind of exploration can I do? What's new? And it goes into a new thing that it doesn't know yet. Okay, now I'm in the 7. How can I understand this better? How can I comprehend this better so that I can improve? So it moves into the 5, into the understanding and creating the data. Okay, now that I understand, how am I going to change things? How am I going to disrupt the status quo to make something new happen? So it's moving towards the 8, the disruptor, the one that is going to create change. And so from the 8, it goes, okay, now that I create this change, how is this going to help others? How is this going to make the world a better place? And so it's moving towards the 2. And then from the 2, it's making the world a better place. Are people feeling better about this? What's the meaning? What's the purpose of it? What's the why behind this? And it's going into the 4, the deeper why, the deeper meaning. And from that 4, I go back into the 1. Whoa, I finally made the world a better place. This place is more excellent than it was before. And I completed the whole trajectory of integration as a 1.
Wow, that's insane in a great way. I'm like, yeah, I mean, really curious now thinking. I did not realize, I'm going to say this back to you, make sure I'm understanding you correctly. When we are in growth, when we are expanding in a positive way, there's a filter in which we rotate through all the personality points. The great thing about the Enneagram is it helps us to identify when there's a missing piece. If I'm understanding you correctly, it sounds like when there's a missing piece, instead of going in that natural direction of growth, I go more in the direction of stress and deterioration, which is a different direction that takes me down a spiral that's not effective. So a couple things is, one, understanding that, but two, sounds like by me really working deeper with the Enneagram is going to help me to identify that one particular piece that generally keeps me stuck or sends me in an opposite direction. You mentioned faith was for you, but for each of us, it's going to probably be our own missing piece.
Each one is going to have their own missing piece according to your predominance, the predominant energy. But I just told you like a trajectory of a 1, an integrated 1. Now let's think of a 1 that is in stress. It's not integrated. A 1 that is in stress. It's trying to improve. It's trying to create something better and improve and create order and so forth. But it's in stress. What does the 1 do? The 1 goes to the 4. And then it starts to play the opossum. It goes inside. Oh my God, what if I'm not good enough? What if this doesn't work? It starts to doubt, it kind of question itself. Why am I doing this? Why others are doing this? I'm doing it all wrong. It should be better. It shouldn't be this way. And so the 1 becomes that individualist that it's trying to fix and deal with its own emotion. And it gets stuck right there. It gets stuck. It can't do anything. Actually, it becomes very overly critical of self and others. And it creates a blockage, if you will, where we become more and more suffocated in our own limitations. And we don't know what to do in order to get out of there. So what happens to the 1? I know that I'm in the 4. I know that I'm in this place of being stuck in my own criticism of myself, criticism of the world, and criticism of others, and criticizing my husband and my family and all those that did this to me. And I start becoming this victim. What do? I go to my missing piece. My missing piece is this superpower of the 4, if you will, which is to use I call it impressionability, the superpower of the 4, which is how can I use my creativity to know the purpose of this, the deeper meaning of this? What do I really want? What is the deeper meaning of this for me? Why am I trying to do this improvement or this? What is the purpose? What is it so important? Is this something I really want to do? And so as I grab into that impressionability, this creative way of looking at something that has deep, heartfelt meaning for me, I gain the strength, I gain the essence to go back into the 1 and look, okay, what needs to be improved? And then I go into the 7. What are the new areas that I'm going to improve? And then I take again that path of integration that I just explained. But if I don't know this, I can be stuck into that place of criticism and self-indulgent of my own emotionalism of lack and negative comparison that gets me stuck there. And I spend, some people, we can spend years in there. We can go into depression and never be able to get out of there unless we have this knowledge and this opportunity to change and to shift. And that opportunity is readily available to us. It's part of the essence that we already carry. And it's just kind of like a click that happens. And you never look at your stress situation the same again anymore, because you know, I'm here because there's a missing piece for me here.
What I love about the Enneagram is the fluidity of it and the complexity of it. I think of like us as human beings, I used to always be like, life is simple. We're the only ones that complicate it. But I'm a complex individual. There's a lot of things to it. And this isn't just a simple little, you're this or you're that. It takes into account all the variables. And when we get a chance to understand it and understand ourselves, what an amazing tool for me to become conscious of subconscious patterns and programs and habits that have been running in me and in many ways sabotaging me. And if I can now take an action step to excavate and recognize the missing piece or pieces that get in the way of me achieving my desired results, whether that's internally or externally. What a powerful tool this is.
Absolutely. It brings you hope. No matter how stressful is your situation or how disintegrated we feel, we know our missing piece. We know what we are there for. And all of a sudden, that which may have seemed the end of the road becomes the beginning of the road. I'm in this stressful situation to get this missing piece that I haven't gotten yet so that I can move forward.
I've just learned through my journey in life, it's all about me taking dominion over my journey. And so sharing tools and skills that can not just give like an answer to somebody from someone else, but a tool that supports you, empowers you to take dominion over your own life. I just see what an amazing tool, an opportunity for people to discover, for me to discover understanding myself on a deeper level, which then allows me to understand others on a deeper level, which then gives me an opportunity to experience more of the peace, love, and joy that I'm seeking in my life.
Exactly. We stop judging ourselves and others and come into greater compassion of ourselves and others, especially when we understand the movement of the energy. I'll give you an example. I see a lot of 5 in my son. And I think it's important to mention too, you don't have to know for sure what is the predominant energy in someone. Those energies are self-evident. And so my son, for example, he loves research, he loves data, he loves information, and he takes his space in order to come into that information and that data. Now, his disintegration is when he over-isolates himself and becomes confused. And he is studying this path and then maybe this, maybe that, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And so inside of his own isolation, he gets lost in bifurcation. It's almost like insatiable. He starts to learn one thing and then he wants to learn more and then he wants to learn this and then he becomes insatiable in his quest for information. And he becomes trapped in that. And so the idea here is to understand, to get like the missing piece of the 5 is the 7, So how can I understand the generativity of the 7, the variety? How can I use the variety of the 7 in order to bring it out into the world and create a disruption, create something new, create something greater and better? And so how can the 5 understand the variety that is available to them and the knowledge that is available to them in the context of what change it can really bring forward into the world? And I call this usefulness, the path of usefulness, of all the variety of all the information you have. Pick one that can be really useful into the world and go out in the world with it. And then the 5 then moves to the 8, that makes it useful, then moves to the 2. Does this really help people? Are people are creating more connection, more loving, more nurturing? And then from there, are people understanding the purpose of this, the meaning of this, the deeper meaning? And is this making the world a better place, which is the 4? The deeper meaning is the 4. And then making the world a better place, the excellence is the 1. And so you start then going into the integration part of it.
You're making me realize I need to take a deep dive into this with you. I really want to understand this journey through the Enneagram. With your background and your history of growing up in Brazil and a very violent environment, and that taking you out of the country and eventually into the corporate world as an attorney, and then leads you into this journey of personal development and launching your own company and the founder of the Institute for Next Level Leadership. How have you taken the strength and understanding of the Enneagram and incorporated it with your own flavor into the Institute, and how is it different than other Enneagram workshops?
I think my life has been a pursuit of an understanding that could give me a sense of how to go about this life. It's like I ran away from what I grew up in, and my purpose was very much to find a way that I could integrate, that I could make sense of life. And I think the Enneagram has been that for me. And I see that because when the Enneagram came into my life, my marriage was about to end. I felt like I had left my country, had left my family, came here, had gotten married. I was about to get divorced, couldn't understand what was going on, couldn't understand myself, couldn't even understand my kids. And so the Enneagram saved my life, not only made me understand my husband, and now we are married for 21 years, but understand my children and understand my family of origin and the energies I see in my own culture. And so when I realized that the Enneagram is much more than personality, the Enneagram is a map of energy. It's a map of creation. I start to look through what I've always been interested in through the eyes of Enneagram, and that is leadership. I grew up during the military dictatorship. So the leadership style in which I grew up had an energy, had a presence, had a feeling of being contrived, and somebody could get killed, right? My dad, in fact, used to tell us, to keep certain books as a secret. For example, he was a lawyer and he was in the opposition of the government at the time. And I think he was always kind of saying, we can be killed at any time here in this country, so watch out. And so there was this sense in the air of the leadership at the time. And so I used the Enneagram, or the energies of the Enneagram, to look at what leadership is or could be. And that's where I created the Institute for Next Level Leadership, because in the Institute, we talk about 5 styles of leadership. We call it wholesome, growth, result, choice, and command and control. All these styles are valuable. We need them all as part of creation. We need them all. And they are all analogous to certain energies in the Enneagram. So the wholesome leadership is very much the 9 energy of bringing it all together. Mm-hmm. The growth leadership is the 8 and the 7. It's like, what have I not seen in myself? How can I grow? What are my opportunities? What are my missing pieces? What's the vision I want to create for myself? The results is very much the 6 and the 7. How can I create the conditions where the faith and the knowledge and the information to create the conditions where results can flourish? So how can that energy of faith and preparedness and information and data and competence can help me create the soil within which results can come forward? And then the energy of the 2 and the 3 is the choice leadership. The energy of the 3 is, okay, what is success? What do I need to do in order to succeed in the world? And the energy of the 2, what do I need to do in order to help others and help myself as well? And how can my choices be around that? What's helpful to me, what's helpful to others, and what promotes success? The choice leadership is the 3 and the 4. So the 3 in terms of what's success, and the 4 in terms of what's meaningful and what's significant. And then the command and control is the energy of the 2 and the 1. Command and control. And it's very much like a mother. You see your kid running out into a street, you're going to say, stop, don't go, so the cars don't run over your kid. So there's like this need to understand what is the best, the highest good for the other, and how can I exert the command and control to create a structure and an order of excellence and perfection where, we can thrive. And so those are the energies of leadership that we talk about.
Thank you for the fact that you're coming on and taking this time to not only give this introduction, but we're going to jump into breaking down each Enneagram point, and you're going to not only help us identify when we're working at our optimal best, but also some of our greatest struggles or pitfalls that we get stuck in. But more importantly, you're going to be sharing with us tools and skills that can help support us in getting rebalanced and out of that. Can you tell us where we can find you online? And then also, if somebody wanted to take the Enneagram test or wanted to read about it more, do you have a website for that or recommendation on where they could go to learn more?
Yeah, so our website is institutefornextlevelleadership.com. For the Enneagram test, I highly suggest the Enneagram Institute RETI test. You can just go Enneagram Institute and you will find the test. But there are many books. Of course, The Wisdom of the Enneagram with Russ Hudson it's an encyclopedia, very worth reading. The one I mentioned with Sandra Maitre, the Spiritual Dimensions of the Enneagram, highly recommended. My most favorite one, Facets of Unity, the Holy Ideas in the Enneagram by Almas is one I love. I love another one called The Enneagram for Leaders by Nicolai Corsino. He's actually a Brazilian author.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. And like we like to do at the end of every show, we'd love for our guests to leave our viewers with a quote that has been meaningful to them.
Yeah, there's this quote I truly love from E.E. Cummings, and it says, it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are.